Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I now call this meeting to order. I'm going to ask Reverend Mac Jackson if he would to say a prayer for us to get started, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Father, in the name of Jesus, as we come before you, we ask for your wisdom, ask for your guidance as we do the business of this great state of Georgia, Father. We know that you're well able and we depend on you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. It is my pleasure and honor to call HB 1358 before this committee. Representative or Chairman Mandy Ballinger will come forward if you just make yourself comfortable there. For those of you in the audience today, I want to remind everyone, we held two hearings on this proposed piece of legislation. I believe one was last week and one was earlier this week. Is that correct, Madam Chair? Okay. So she's going to present this bill, and then we're going to open it up for questions and comments amongst the members of this deliberative body.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that this, I presented this bill before the subcommittee twice. We heard from the public, and this is really just kind of to, substantiate or answer any remaining questions that members of the committee might still have regarding House Bill 1358. I am working from LC 393311S, and the substantive portions of the bill are. I'll just kind of go through those. It's kind of starts on 42 and runs until 46. And it basically says any weapon or long gun, unless such person is a lawful weapons carrier, is used in this paragraph. The term weapon, long gun, and lawful weapons carrier shall have the same meanings as provided in Code Section 1611-125-1. And then another substantive portions you'll find on line 66 through 68. Lawful weapons carrier means any license holder, person who is eligible to retain a weapons carry permit and is not otherwise prohibited by law from possessing a weapon or long gun, or person licensed to carry a weapon in any other state. That really is the substance of the bill. We're basically saying that anybody who wants to possess a weapon, carry a weapon, they don't have to have a card from the government to be able to exercise that right. And basically the rest of it just kind of strikes and provides for, instead of weapons carry license, a lawful weapons carrier, which is the definition that I just went over. There's very little change other than that change, substituting lawful weapons carrier for weapons carry license holder throughout the rest of the bill. I'll be more than happy to take any questions. Like I said, the substantive parts of the bill are line 60, where that definition change is, on line 66 through 68.
Okay. All right. We do have a few questions for the author. Number 16, is that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To my friend, Representative Ballinger. Well, a question, and I've been asked this by my constituents.
Sure.
What about the reciprocity laws? Would you still need a license to carry if you're going into another state?
It would depend upon the laws of that state. You would have to abide by the laws of that state. I will say that 23 other states have what they call a permitless carrier, constitutional carry. So this isn't a new idea, or it's not something that's unheard of in other states.
23 other states do have
it.
Any further questions, Representative Jackson?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Number 9 down here. Who is that? Would you raise your hand? Representative Evans, you're recognized at this time.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't in the other subcommittee, so I haven't, I just started reviewing this legislation yesterday. So I did want to just clarify a few things about this. So we do know in Georgia, since we don't have criminal background checks in firearm sales, that there is a large market for guns, such as at gun shows or through websites like arms.com. And these do not require people to get background checks. So do you agree with that?
No.
So what would be your response to that? That all guns, I mean, I'm talking about buying a gun initially, not about getting the permitless carry.
Well, you have to have a background check to obtain a firearm from a licensed retail dealer. Whether or not, in this bill right here, it doesn't have to do with buying or selling firearms. It only has to do with what you can and can't do with a card from the government. So if you could stick to germane questions, I would
Okay, well,
appreciate it.
I guess
This isn't something, kind of on firearms over general. So
Well,
it's specifically
I guess my line of, may I go on, Chairman?
sure.
Yeah, so my line of reasoning is that this background check does, this concealed carry permit does provide an extra layer of protection for Georgians to make sure that some people aren't getting a permit. Aren't having a concealed carry permit.
Having a concealed carry permit does carry with it some benefits. One of those is ease of purchase of firearm. So there are some, and a lot of people, that's why we're not doing away with the weapons carry permit. We still maintain that permit process for people who want to have a permit. And most of those people are, people who are buying and selling guns, and they don't want the hassle of having to go through that background check every time they want to purchase a firearm. So there are some advantages to having a permit.
Right. I do want to make sure that, do you know that last year over 5,000 people applied for a concealed carry permit and they were denied through the system because they were not eligible to own a gun? So were you aware of that statistic?
No.
Okay, so that, to me, when we do away with this this concealed carry permit, that possibly there could be another 5,000 people that would be potentially, carrying a gun that really, shouldn't have one. And the other point I would just make is that if we do pass this, and I know we're on a trajectory, unfortunately, to pass it, that we still have these loopholes where people can buy guns at these gun shows and everything. And so we just have this unfettered access to guns. I'm very, very concerned about that.
I would like to point out that this
Yep.
doesn't increase the universe. It just does away with the, if you want to carry a concealed, you don't have to have a card from the government. That's all this bill does. It doesn't increase the universe. It doesn't, it's not going to stop bad people from doing bad things. If you can come up with a bill that prevents that, I'll be more than happy to be second signer on it. But, unfortunately, our legislation, our government is not set up to police to that level. If bad people are going to do bad things, unfortunately, punishment is our first, our front line.
Do you think that this legislation will improve safety in Georgia?
Oh, I think definitely.
Okay. And are you aware that in Arizona, since they enacted permitless carry legislation in 2010, the annual rate of aggravated assaults committed with a firearm increased by 8%. And since Alaska enacted permitless carry law in 2003, the state has experienced a 65% increase in annual rate of aggravated assaults with a gun. Were you aware of those statistics?
No, I was not aware of those statistics, but, with regards to Arizona's 8%, how much did the population increase over time, over that time?
Chair now recognize Chairman Powell for a different perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate being recognized, and I want to see if I can walk through this, if I may, and to your editorializing this issue. To start with, I want to tell you the concealed weapons permit bill that's currently in effect in the state of Georgia that we passed several years ago, Ms. Ballinger, Chairman Jaspers, myself, and numerous of other people. We passed that bill because on Second Amendment issues, we've been taking a bite out of the apple every year to try to see what works. A lot of times we hadn't been able to pass everything that should have been passed to really ensure people's Second Amendment rights to have a weapon. But the concealed weapon permit bill that you talk about, it will remain in effect. And there's a reason for that, because it's important that not every state reciprocates with the state of Georgia. And those that do, that still require that permit. So this permitting process for true Second Amendment supporters until nationwide something is done, which I hold that little confidence about the U.S. Congress. But Second Amendment, they'll be able to reciprocate with the other states that recognize Georgia. Secondly, and most importantly, one of the bills that was passed in the 90s, and I may have a little bit of knowledge of that bill because a guy by the name of Curtis Jenkins and myself passed this on the heels of the Brady Act, that if you have a Georgia concealed weapons permit, then you don't have a waiting period at a licensed firearm store, which is important to a lot of folks that they do that. So there is a purpose for that. I would like to remind the good lady that when this bill was passed, the concealed weapons permit, there was anxiety, there was threats that there would be blood in the streets. It was the most terrible thing possible. The New York Times, LA Times, they put some of the legislators in Georgia's pictures on their front page and talked about how dangerous it was. But yet the blood didn't run in the streets. And it was a step forward. Now we move forward to the point that this governor, and as is in all legislation, there's a time for all of it. We've had governors who did not believe in moving forward with it. So because of that, in the legislative process, we didn't move forward. It wasn't a matter that permitless carry wasn't an issue. It was a matter we couldn't pass it at the time, but now we can because we have a governor who recognizes the necessity and the rights of all people to a rights. So there's a lot of, everybody's got their own opinions. Bad people do bad things. There's no perfect solution to anything in our society, but there's not enough police officers. Our people that in public safety, they can't get to a lot of the episodes that happen. Case in point for the folks that live in the metro area. It would be a good thing if you have your own weapon, but I will continue to say people have a responsibility. They need to know what deadly force is. They need to know how to use a weapon, but there is nothing that is better in the case of an active shooter or a criminal taking advantage of somebody than a law-abiding citizen that has a weapon and knows how to use it. So that's my editorial back to your editorial.
Chair will recognize Chairman Jaspers now.
This is not an editorial. This is a question to the bill sponsor. Okay, under your legislation, Chairman Ballinger, if a lady who is not otherwise prohibited from carrying a weapon with a sudden threat to her life the night before, if she's comfortable with it, be able to more quickly able to arm herself under your legislation if she chooses to and protect herself.
Yes, actually, a colleague of mine in Tennessee passed a bill that did away with the wait time on a concealed carry permit if the lady had filed a temporary protective order, knowing the lethality in domestic violence situations. A lot of people say, why do you carry a Glock? And the answer is, well, it's lighter than a police van. So certainly it enables someone who wishes to do so to take responsibility for their own public safety.
Thank you, madam.
Chairman Petrie at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chairman Ballinger, so just a couple of things to point out. First of all, to the comment about people buying guns without a criminal record check, that doesn't happen if they're legally purchasing firearms. And this body I carried a bill 3 years ago. We dealt with the issue of people getting guns illegally, felons getting guns, increased penalties for that. I just wanted to mention that. But is it not true that this bill has nothing to do with how people acquire guns? It simply is focused on making sure that people have a right to carry them when, in fact, by definition, criminals are carrying weapons concealed anyway. And this bill would ensure that law-abiding citizens have a right to, as long as they have nothing that would encumber their ability to carry a weapon, have the right to do so. Correct?
That is correct, Chairman Petrie.
Okay, thank you. Chair recognize Representative Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just along some of the lines that Chairman Petrie mentioned, I know earlier it was mentioned about gun show loopholes. And that's just a widely held misconception because everybody that is dealing firearms at a gun show is a licensed registered dealer. And any licensed dealer has to run a background check on an individual before they sell a firearm. Isn't that correct?
It's my
Or
understanding, correct?
Or if they have a weapons carry license, that proves that they have one already on file and it expedites that purchase. Is that correct?
That is.
So the gun show loophole is a widely held misconception in the public. Is that correct?
As are a lot of misconceptions with regards to firearms.
This bill also, it doesn't expand who can carry or where they can carry.
That's correct.
It just simply says if you meet the qualifications that this state has laid out for you to carry a firearm legally, that you can carry it without having to ask the state permission to do so.
That is correct.
And then final question. Over the COVID period, in this state, we've had an issue with judges and the courts getting through the applications in a timely manner for people to get their license. Is that correct?
I believe there were some instances when probate court suffered a backlog because the courthouse had been closed due to COVID.
So would you agree that a court that is unable to timely process that application is in fact an infringement upon the Second Amendment rights to carry, to have a firearm? The guarantee that our Second Amendment has that them not processing those applications does infringe upon that right.
It does prevent people from carrying concealed whenever they are ensured that right by the Second Amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Representative Evans, you have a final question there?
I wanted to ask the chairwoman, is that if this bill passes, would you be open to some type of different legislation that would ask that gun owners undergo training, firearms training, so that they know how to use their weapon?
There are a lot of firearms courses. The NRA offers firearms courses. Many of our gun ranges offer safety courses and firearms courses, and how to improve your shot. So there are a lot of courses already out there for those that are interested. I myself go clay shooting. It's really fun. So those courses are already available. I think making a requirement for an exercise of a fundamental constitutional right is wrong. We don't require a journalism degree for freedom of speech. We don't require divinity degrees for freedom of religion. Why should we require a class to exercise the Second Amendment right?
And I would just say that those are not lethal. These are, a gun is a lethal weapon. And so I do feel like there should be a higher standard.
Okay, we'll recognize the governor's floor leader, Representative Lott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for bringing this legislation. I have just a question, and it falls in line a little bit with Representative Evans' comments. And she made the comment about an increase in aggravated assaults. Even in recent conversations I attend to regularly, if I get into these conversations, it's usually for some reason, it's a man telling me I don't need a weapon. So let's start with, I've got a little bit of an issue with that. At 130 pounds, they got me. That's it. So said he don't count on it. But I think my question for you in relationship to that is, in your research, have you not found that women tend to have, I will say this, in those places where we are not allowed to carry, have you found in your research that there may be an increase in domestic violence, in rapes, in some of the things that we can't defend ourselves as easily with? Is there any background on that you know of? There
isn't with regards to the lethality in a woman possessing or not possessing a firearm. There's no research on that. Having worked in the domestic violence arena for quite some time, there's not any research to kind of compare those apples to oranges. However, I will say that, God did create man and woman, but it took Smith and Wesson to make them equal. So, some people can say that, there's no way that a woman is ever going to physically be able to overpower, some people, but, a firearm would certainly ensure her public safety.
Thank you. At this time, I'll recognize Chairman Powell for a motion.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd move that this House do pass HB 1358 LC 393321S as a committee substitute, and I make that a motion.
Does the chair hear a second? Second. There is a second to pass HB 1358 LC 393321S as a substitute. All those in
I'm
favor,
sorry,
please say aye.
Correction, Mr. Chair, I do apologize. I have LC 393311S. That is, okay.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So the 21 is the most, okay.
Yes,
I
that's
do
correct.
apologize. I was working from an older version. I have 17 versions of this bill running around my office and I just picked up the wrong one. So I do apologize
Thank you, ma'am.
on the correct
So-
LC number.
So the posture of the committee now is there was a motion made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed? Okay, the ayes clearly have it, and this bill will go on to rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman,
Thank
members
you.
of the committee. Appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Now here, House Bill 1378. Chairman Jaspers, if you want to go down to the table or podium.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have the original 1378. It's not been amended, so there's not a sub. It's 393256.
Yes.
Ready? Okay. Firstly, as I mentioned the other day, when you get involved in these bills, you get a lot of people that support you. And today I have one of my constituents here, and it's Jeff Anderson. Lives up above me, can hear me when I'm chasing my kids or my dog in my yard. And I'll tell you just a quick story, not to burn time, but when I first started this, he helped me cut watermelon on the first time that I was on July 4th in Calhoun at the county fair to get elected. And I appreciate him, and he's been a great stalwart supporter of mine on Second Amendment issues. And I just appreciate Mr. Anderson.
You don't get much more grassroots than that.
You don't. And we all should thank those that help us.
Amen.
So in the bill, this is something that we have all seen. You look at House Bill 218, it went over, we passed it, went to the Senate, they added a few things that came back. We, passed, agreed, disagreed. We stripped it down to just the reciprocity language. Generally, that's what's in here, except for the first part. This comes back to part of the bill that we have all seen. If you've been on our committee, it's the church and the change in what churches are. We're moving them to private property. That's what the strikeout does. And that's all it does. And, thought I'd make it just a little story about what it means. The first time we really debated this was, currently a large church got money. They can afford to hire security and prohibit everyone else in the church from having a weapon. Small church, they can't afford it. And in doing so, they have to allow everyone to carry and to have their own security within the building. And what this change does is allow them to do as they wish. If they want to prohibit people and designate a security team, they can. If they want to let everybody carry, they can. That's what private property is. And I think it's very important to go and let them do as they choose. The state of Georgia is very diverse across the state, and this will put everybody on the same playing field, and they'll be treated as common trespass. In section 2, This request is due to COVID closures and whatever the future may bring. It will allow the online application, the renewal, and accept renewal by mail by our probate judges. You know, as we know now, you know, when your renewals come through, they have to run your background check. You don't have to get new fingerprints. This makes it very easy for them to do that. We'd love to allow them to do that, but it also prohibits a database. This database is sometimes in a good thought, you know, there's a good intention that they may want to just remind the member, you know, the license holder, permit holder, that it's, you know, 5 years from now. But we do not want databases that are out there for be hacked or used to track down people who have a weapon or weapons license. There has to be a penalty to do this. You see that in the bill, because some will do it and we need to prohibit it. In Section 3, governments acquire many weapons over the year. This section requires the sale of these unclaimed weapons once every 12 months when 5 or more are accumulated and in possession of the county. Again, there's a trigger to force them to sell. In Section 4, under the declared state of emergency, firearms, ammunition, reloading supplies cannot be seized. Also, the prohibition manufacturing sale during or prior to a declared state of emergency. Also, they cannot close or limit the hours of being open unless all businesses are closed. Also on ranges, you know, where we talked about training just a moment ago, where all business are closed. And in Section 5, it's just refers back in emergency powers and another code section to the emergency powers language. Mr. Chairman, that's where our bill is. And I'll be glad to answer the committee's questions.
Any questions for members of this committee? Any comments from members of this committee? 27, Chairman Powell.
Thank you. I want to thank my good friend for bringing this bill forward. Well thought out. I would like to ask a question, and this may or may not be the best time. We can certainly add to a little something into here. But on Section 4, dealing with government seizure during a state of an emergency, it had been brought to me by some other people who had concerns in the definition section where we, on line 29, that a weapon shall have the same meaning as set forth in Code Section 16-1-125.1, that deals only with firearms. And some of the folks who have concerns that we have a broader code section that would define knives or clubs or those things. I would ask, do we want to send to the author, do we want to send this bill out clean as introduced, or would this be a time to add this to it, or we can add to it at any point? Because we know once it gets over into the Senate, this thing can come back looking like a Christmas tree. And then we wind up going to conference committee. We could put it in then, or we can put it in now at the wishes of the author of the bill, and I'll leave that up to you.
Well, Chairman Powell, in 1611-127.1 is a much broader definition of weapon. This probably has 25 different things in that code section
Right.
that describe a weapon, and I wouldn't be opposed to doing it right now.
All right, then I'll make that motion at the proper time. And thank you again. And since you certainly had a chance to recognize your constituent, that old gentleman is wearing a blue sport coat and got the white beard that looks like Santa Claus. He is absolutely the most important person in this room to me, because he's the only one that can vote for me in this room. But he is a certified gun trainer, firearms expert, and absolutely one of the finest people that I know from Livonia, Georgia. And I'd like to welcome you, Mike.
Chair recognize Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Jaspers, just want to be clear on the church section that you said, and understand so I can explain to my constituents what we need to do.
Yeah.
You said it become private property, a church now. So do we need to put the signs up prohibiting guns, or what does the church change? How does it change with the church?
Well, they can put a sign up.
Mhm.
Representative, but it's going to be up to the church to enforce their internal policy. The sign can be violated. It's not going to prevent you from walking in, but they have to enforce it and ask them to leave. If they don't, they're certainly welcome at that moment to call law enforcement and have them charged with trespass.
Okay.
Yes.
Any
Thank
further
you.
questions? Okay. Representative Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. Quick question to my friend. In section 2 on lines 96 through 98 and also 111 and 112, if I'm reading this correctly, if a city or any political subdivision of the state or any political subdivision, if they fail to comply to auctioning off firearms in the timely manner that's laid out in this bill, that in those lines, it says a prevailing plaintiff in such action shall be entitled to his or her cost. So that means any fees that they get, they're going to, so a city does not comply with this, they're going to have to reimburse the plaintiff in that case.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman Petrie.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Jasper, section 3, and I apologize for asking the question now. I wasn't on the subcommittee that vetted this bill. Section 3, can you explain that a little more fully? Because I have a situation in my hometown where they have chosen to retain these firearms rather than to sell them. So I want you to explain very clearly what this does.
Well, I think the simple
Yeah,
answer
they've
is
chosen that path.
if they've chosen that path, if this is passed and signed by the governor, they'll have to sell them. They'll have to
They'll be-
auction them off. And, and I think the neat thing that it has to go through a licensed firearm dealer.
No, I
They're
know.
not
I
just
know
going to
all
have
that.
an auction and anybody can buy them. The firearms dealer, they'll have to, as you asked a moment ago, with a permit, they can pick it up immediately. If the dealer, all that, but it's just puts them in the road. They've got to do it. And if they don't, Mr. Chairman, you can have an opportunity to force them to do so.
Yeah, and again, so I understand well, those guns will be sold to law-abiding citizens. I've always made that clear. That's my concern is it would be contrary to what my community is doing right now and what they choose to do. So,
Yes, it
so
would.
to be clear, it would require them to sell those weapons.
Absolutely.
Okay. Would you be willing to consider removing section 3 from this bill?
No, sir, I would not.
You would
I
not.
oppose it.
Okay. Thank
Representative Evans.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in our community, in the Decatur community, we've had some guns to gardens where people turn in their guns and they make like public art for gardens out of them. And if the municipality wanted to do something like that with their guns, that will be illegal under this law.
Yes, ma'am. They would need to sell them. Now, the individual can donate it to that organization as they choose. There would be no prohibition against that.
So an individual could donate to the city for that, but if a weapon was taken by the municipality from a criminal, then they could not, the municipality could not donate the gun for that purpose.
Yes, ma'am, that's right.
Any further discussion at this time? Would be the desire of this committee. There's a move to do pass. Is there a second?
Second.
29 from code section 1611, 125.1 to 1611, 127.1. To be sure if that would be proper, because that second code section just expands the definition of weapons.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. And that will be my motion that we amend we amend the House Bill 1378 in the form of a committee substitute by changing on the end of line 129, the code section, strike the present code section and replace it with 16-11-127-1.
Okay. You're making that in the form of a motion to,
I
as an
am
amendment.
to amend.
And Floor Leader Lott seconds that amendment. Okay. I need a second on the you seconded the Representative Mathis seconded the do pass. So I need a vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, amendment is tacked on. Okay, there was a motion made by Representative Clark, seconded by Representative Mathis, do pass as amended in this committee. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, the ayes clearly have it. Thank you, Chairman
Thank
Jasper.
you, Mr. Chairman, committee.
While we're taking points of personal privilege to recognize those folks in the room, I want to recognize James Camp here. He's with the 2A group, Georgia 2A, and he has always advocated for
Yes.
Second Amendment rights here in our state, most specifically in my district. So I appreciate you being here with us today. Thank you. Got a couple more bills before us today. One has not been heard in subcommittee, and we're going to have a little testimony on that if need be. But we're going to move to House Bill 1455. House Bill 1455 by Colonel Hitchens. If you want to go down to the desk and present there for us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I hope this one's a little easier than the last one I was here for.
Before you continue, I just want to say that this bill came up pretty quick, and we wanted to have it as soon as possible because it is a very important piece of legislation. So we're going to just go dive right into it.
Well, as many of you know, I represent the Port of Savannah. The overwhelming majority of the container port is in my district. And the growth over the last 15 or 20 years has just been off the charts. And as a result, there's not enough geographic area within the port itself to house all the containers and all the equipment and all the things that the port requires. So what we're asking here is that the Georgia Port Authority Police, who are all certified police officers, have the authority when they transit back and forth to the facilities that they purchased so that they can check on the equipment and the property there and take action as needed, have the same powers in that jurisdiction that they're in as they have on the Port Authority. Basically, that's a synopsis of. I have letters here from the adjoining jurisdictions. They're all in favor of it, and they have good working relationships. The traffic in and out of the ports, particularly with tractor trailers, is just astonishing, and they have traffic jams. And the local authorities appreciate the port police coming out and assisting with traffic direction, and in rare instances doing accident reports. So it's everybody's on board with this, and they had the State of the Port address the other day. They predicted the port's going to grow another 60% in the next 5 to 10 years. So this is going to be ongoing.
That's wonderful. It's a good problem to have.
It's good for our area.
That's
My
right.
district's the third fastest growing district in the state.
Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to this bill? Okay. Any questions from the author of the bill at this time? If not, the chair would entertain a motion.
Move to pass.
Move to pass. Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, your bill passes. Thank you, Colonel. And our last bill that we're going to hear today is going to be House Bill 830 by Representative Irwin. If you'll come forward at this time, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't know there was going to be an all-star cast with all-star bills before mine here,
You
but
are.
thank you for the opportunity.
You're here in the Public Safety Committee, and we're just like the Love Boat. There's always something exciting and new here before this committee
Yeah, yes, it is.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman and representatives. Today I bring before you House Bill 830, which updates our general law concerning the minimum salary of our elected sheriffs. If you'll look at the second page of the bill, it's 2 pages, or excuse me, the bottom of the first page, you're seeing we are changing 1 line there in this bill 830, and it is the sheriffs will serve more than 1 court. As you can see previously, that is what their minimum salary was based on, serving of only 1 court. We elect our sheriffs, and our state laws determine their mandates and responsibilities, which are many. Sheriff's minimum salaries are determined by county population, years of service as an elected sheriff, state mandated COLAs, and 1 state mandated supplement for serving 1 court in addition to the Superior Court. As you know, sheriffs are officers of the court and must provide court security, serve civil papers, execute warrants, return prisoners, and perform other court services as needed. Sheriffs devote a considerable amount of staff, resources, and personal time serving our courts. House Bill 830 seeks to authorize minimum salary supplements for each additional court served, as are presently authorized for our clerks of Superior Court. Our current law establishes the supplement to be $385.90 per month for each court served. Since sheriffs presently receive a supplement for 1 court in addition to Superior Court under House Bill 830, most sheriffs will qualify for up to 3 additional courts served. The minimum salary of our elected sheriffs should be increased considering the immense degree of responsibility and liability they assume as a result of the will of past and present legislation and governors. I'm specifically talking there about the accountability courts, as well as the other duties that we have put on our sheriffs. I would think you would agree with me. Our sheriffs are very important to us. They do a very good job for this state. They work very hard, and I feel personally they should be compensated for that, not just 1 court, but all courts that they serve. I do have some data, but in time here, I'll hold off unless questions come where I can provide that data as needed, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. At this time, I do want to hear, we did have testimony in subcommittee, and it was been brought to my attention that ACCG does take a position on this. So for the benefit of all the members of the committee, I'm going to ask if they'd come forward at this time and state their opinion. Sometimes we can't please everybody, and that's why we have members of this committee to make these hard decisions. So if you would, please just state your name and who you're with.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gabriel Carter. Thank you, Chairman, for this opportunity, and fellow committee members. I've been able to speak to quite a few of you today, and I know this is an extremely challenging issue, but I appreciate the opportunity to speak a little bit on it. We believe that this conversation cannot be discussed in isolation. We believe that when talking about the sheriff's salary, there's an entire conversation that needs to be had. So there's only 3 things that we want to make sure that you are considering when voting on this bill. The first is that the General Assembly over the years has actually enacted legislation and done things to increase the salaries of sheriffs. So in 2019, their base salary was increased through SB 171. In 2020, they received a COLA, cost of living adjustment. In this current budget, FY22, FY23, the governor's $5,000 increase for state employees would also go to the sheriffs. And then there's also longevity payments, 5% for each term served. So this isn't just a matter of one couple $1,000s that are coming to sheriffs. There's a lot of things that go into sheriff's salary. The second thing is that a lot of counties, we appreciate our sheriffs, and we want to do everything possible to know that they're let them know that they're appreciated. So a lot of our counties outside of state mandates do local supplements, which are completely voluntary. A lot of them try to make sure that they are giving that in addition to what the state mandates that their salaries are. And the third thing we want you to consider with this bill, to try to make this simple, sheriffs can serve on a total of 6 courts. They already serve the Superior Court. That's a part of their just standard duty. They are able right now in law to serve on 1 additional court for an extra supplement of $4,000, $4,600. That leaves 4 additional courts that they can serve on. So even if they just serve on 3 additional courts with this bill, that's $12,000. That's over $12,000 that will be gone to increase their salaries. So when thinking about that number, I want you to think about the small rural counties and what a $12,000 increase can do to someone's salary and the burden that that may place on a small rural county's budget. So in closing, I promised the chairman that I wouldn't take too long, but in closing, we want you to know that we are deeply appreciative and immensely grateful for the work that our sheriffs do. We know it's not easy. We know they put their lives on the line every day, and we know that they work to keep our community safe. But this bill puts us in a challenging position as counties because we have to look at our county budget and say, how do we figure out how we can compensate everyone adequately, but also provide quality county services? And sometimes that means saying no to really hard things. So we're asking you all to join us in saying no to something that's really challenging, I know, for all of you all, and oppose this bill, because we believe that when the state comes and mandates what county funds are going to, it impedes our ability to provide those quality county services. So we're asking you to oppose this bill with us, and I'll stay for any questions if there are any.
I do take one exception to one of the things you said. Not every county across this state will have those 4 additional courts. I mean, is that right?
Yeah, so not every county has a recorder's court, but every county has a probate court, every county has a juvenile court, and some of the magistrate courts are with the probate courts, but that's far and few between. So each county would have at a minimum, most counties would have at a minimum 3 additional courts that would fall into this bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Floor Leader Lott, you have a question or comment?
I do. I have a probably a simple question. You may have said this, so I apologize. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for recognizing me. Are they mandated to serve on the courts if they are requested? Are the sheriffs mandated to say yes, required to say yes if they are requested to serve the court?
To be frank with you, I'm not sure that they are mandated. If they are asked, I know a lot of the sheriffs do serve in that role, but I'm not sure that they're mandated if they are asked. But again, to try to answer the complete question, we know it's a challenge to ask them to serve on a court and not get that additional supplement for it, but we try to make up for that in a lot of different ways. So.
Additional question. If
Go ahead.
And so what do courts who don't use the sheriff do? How do they provide enforcement? What do they do?
That's a question I don't have the answer to. Maybe Terry can speak on that.
We'll let come on up, Sheriff Norris.
Come on. You've elevated. I think the short answer to that is, if the sheriffs did not serve these courts, who would? And that's your question.
And how much would it cost?
Well, the state court, for instance, in Muskogee County, that part of his budget's $250,000 a year just for that state court. I do know that. But the point I wanted to make is this: if the sheriff wasn't doing it, then it would probably fall on the county governing authorities to fund somebody that does. Now, nobody else can really do it unless there's a county police. A lot of times, though, in a state court, you'll see a county marshal that does it, because that court, a marshal was paid by the county governing authority for that particular court. There is legislation that lets that occur. That doesn't happen in a lot of cases, but it happens in some. Your metro Atlanta counties, Fulton, DeKalb, I don't think Gwinnett, but they have marshal services that handle that court.
Okay.
And may I just ask?
Yes, ma'am. Go right ahead.
So I do have a fear, Mr. Carter, that if we don't incentivize our sheriffs to do this job, I have a concern as to who is going to do the job, what it will cost the counties. And this probably is just a question for you to maybe look into as well as we move along in this process.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. I'll definitely try to see if I can get some clarity on providing you a adequate answer with that. And I guess I'll just say briefly in response to that question, we believe that through the actions taken through the General Assembly over the years, through actions that county takes through local supplements and various means, that we try to compensate, even if it's not directly, try to compensate the sheriffs for all of the work that they do.
Okay, Chairman Powell at this time.
Thank you. Question, since you're pretty versed in this, and I thank my friends of the ACCG. Can you tell me how many of these supplements that the probate judges in there, they have a minimum salaries act also. Can you tell me how many extra courts or extra duties that they get compensation for?
For the probate court?
For the probate judges?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not very well versed in the probate court judges, and I know the clerks get something as well. I've been really just kind of focusing on the sheriff. I'm sorry I don't have the answer, but I can work.
The point I'm making is this has been a common practice that a lot of these constitutional officers, granted, a lot of them are overpaid based on what they do, but you have probate judges, and there's been a period of years that there's been other supplemental issues made to their salary for doing certain things. The same with the clerks of the court, the same with magistrates. And if I'm not sure, maybe you could answer it, or maybe my good friend, Representative Irwin, but even with this boost for the sheriffs that are doing extra court activity, if I'm not sure, this still probably wouldn't bring any of the sheriffs nowhere near what hired superintendents make today. And they're not elected.
I would,
And I
Representative
don't mean that,
Powell,
and I'm not saying-
like to defer away from that for a moment, please.
I mean, and I'm not saying that as a slam to you, my friend, but what a point I want to make to this is these folks are elected. These folks are elected, and the sheriffs of the county are the chief law enforcement officers of the county. And I would like to, that's my point that I want to make. It happens in other constitutional officers,
It
and
sure
it
does.
happens to hired people,
Sure does.
the bureaucrats. And in a lot of cases, the bureaucrats are making way more than the people who put their name on the ballot and run.
That's a very good point there. All
Thank
right,
you.
we'll recognize, is that Chairman Taylor?
Yes,
That's you?
sir. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Just a quick question about the illustration that you've given to us.
Yes.
The base salary is the 70,000 for all sheriffs?
No, it's not. It's based on population. So for
That-
this number, it was
Okay.
about between a population of 20,000 to about 28,000.
Okay, that's what I wanted to check because that didn't look quite right to me. And when you calculate the 5%, do you calculate it off that base salary only
So for the longevity payment, it's 5% for each term.
for each term, each
Yeah.
4-year term?
Yes.
Okay, I love my sheriff.
All right. Okay, number 8, is that Representative Frazier?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please go ahead.
My question might be for you, Mr. Carter, it might be for Mr. Norris, whoever might have the stats. I represent small counties. And so can you just give me a guesstimate of, just for example, I just inherited Jenkins County. The population there and the sheriff salary with this increase, $5,000, and possibly if this legislation passed, fees now for increase for the courts, what would his or her salary be?
So I don't know
Projected salary.
I don't know the exact population, but what I'll say in response to that is what we're seeing with this is there's a lot of
7,000.
about 7,000. I have to go back and look. There's a list of salaries for each one. There's about 12, 13. So I can try to get that specific bracket to you. But the challenge is that for a lot of these counties, we're fine when it comes to percentages because that's relative, right? Smaller counties get a little bit less with a percentage, but when you have these concrete numbers like $5,000 from the governor's budget or $4,600 for each additional court, now that's not taking into consideration the size of the county at all. And that's part of the issue for us, because if you do have a smaller county, it does matter that there's a $5,000 increase to the sheriff's salary or a $4,000 increase for each additional court. Now we're not talking about percentages and relative amounts to the size of the county. Now we're talking about concrete numbers that doesn't take into respect the size of the county in their budget. So I hope I can try to get you a more specific answer in regard to your specific county, but trying to give some perspective to your question.
All right. At this time, the chair will submit to the will of the committee. There's a motion made and seconded to do pass House Bill 830 LC 471072. Is that the
Yes,
right
sir.
number? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, ayes clearly have it. You're on the rules. Thank you very much for being here with us. This concludes the business of this committee today. We stand adjourned.
Thank you.
Irwin, appreciate you doing this. We'll keep working. Members of the committee.
You want to give Ms. Frazier your number? I saw you work the number up for Jenkins County. I think that they-
No, sir.